Imagine this. Every bone in your body, every muscle, every breath you take is a story billions of years in the making. Your spine was once a fin, your hands were once paddles, and the body you're lying in right now is a living time machine. Welcome to Sleep Theory. Tonight's story is called How Evolution Built the Body. Together, we'll drift back through deep oceans, strange forests, and ancient skies to uncover how creatures of the past slowly stitched you into existence. Before we set off, I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it in your corner of the world? Drop a comment below, and let's map out this sleepy little universe together. And if the sound of science helps you rest, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this calm space grow. Now, close your eyes, loosen your thoughts, and let's begin the quiet story of how your body came to be.
Earth, about 3.8 billion years ago. The air is toxic, the oceans are simmering with chemicals, and the only nightlife involves lightning-striking puddles of amino acids. Romantic in a hostile sort of way. This is the beginning, not of humans or even animals, but of life itself. Back then, the Earth was still cooling off from its violent formation. Volcanoes spewed gas, asteroids occasionally dropped in uninvited, and somewhere in all that chaos, the chemistry of life quietly got to work. Scientists don't know exactly how life began, and if anyone tells you they do, they're either lying or selling crystals. But we have some pretty solid guesses. The leading idea is that simple molecules started forming complex chains, amino acids, lipids, sugars, floating around in the so-called primordial soup. Add a little lightning, a pinch of volcanic heat, and a few million years of trial and error, and you get the first cells, tiny self-replicating bubbles of potential. These earliest organisms were prokaryotes, life's version of minimalism. No nucleus, no organelles, just a wobbly membrane, some genetic material, and the tenacity to keep dividing. If you're picturing something like a microscopic jelly bean with ambition, you're not far off. For a couple billion years, that was life. Just single-celled organisms floating around, soaking up minerals, and dividing like it was their full-time job. Honestly, they were the original remote workers. No meetings, no traffic, just vibes. But then came a revolutionary moment. At some point, one cell swallowed another and didn't digest it. Instead, they formed a kind of merger. The swallowed cell started helping out with energy production, and the host cell let it stay. This wasn't just a dinner date gone weird. This was endosymbiosis, and it gave birth to the eukaryotic cell. Suddenly, cells had internal compartments, nuclei, mitochondria, chloroplasts. It was like moving from a studio apartment to a mansion with a full staff. This leap in complexity was huge. Eukaryotic cells could do more, grow bigger, and specialize. They became the building blocks of all complex life, including, eventually, us. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, let's pause and appreciate what evolution had pulled off so far. We had gone from lifeless rock to self-replicating molecules, to single-celled organisms, to cells with internal power plants and an aptitude for cooperation. All without a plan, a blueprint, or even a brain to think one up. Just chemistry, chance, and an unrelenting drive to persist. Here's the thing about evolution. It's not a guided process. There's no final form, no perfection, just variation, survival, and inheritance. If a mutation helps an organism survive better, it tends to stick around. If it doesn't, Well, evolution's not sentimental. It's nature's most ruthless editor. One of the most profound changes during this early period was the rise of photosynthesis. Somewhere along the way, certain cells figured out how to capture sunlight and turn it into energy. Think of them as the first solar panels, billions of years ahead of the curve. These photosynthesizing pioneers started producing oxygen as a byproduct, and over millions of years, they filled Earth's atmosphere with it. To them, it was waste. To future organisms, including us, it would be absolutely vital. This was the Great Oxygenation Event, and it changed everything. Oxygen killed off many anaerobic species that couldn't handle it, but it also paved the way for new life that could breathe it in and burn fuel more efficiently. In evolutionary terms, oxygen was like switching from a hand-cranked generator to a fusion reactor. So now we had complex cells capable of breathing oxygen and organizing themselves into more than just lonely blobs. But for billions of years, life still stuck to the single-cell model. Why? Because being multicellular is hard. Cells have to communicate, cooperate, and crucially, not eat each other. It's the biological equivalent of trying to share a bathroom with 6 roommates and not start a war. Eventually, some cells managed to pull it off. They stuck together, specialized, and began forming primitive colonies. Picture a bunch of cells realizing, hey, you do the moving, I'll do the digesting, and Bob over there can handle reproduction. And just like that, the seeds of tissues and organs were planted. Still, it would be a long, long time before anything you'd recognize as an animal appeared. For now, the stars of the show were tiny, squishy, and invisible to the naked eye. But they were laying the groundwork, line by microscopic line, for the incredible variety of life that would follow. There's something oddly comforting about that, isn't there? That your body, in all its dizzying complexity, traces back to ancient chemistry and single-celled experiments. That your eyes, your bones, your breath all carry echoes of this deep and ancient past. You are, in a very real sense, a walking fossil of evolution's most audacious ideas. And while we've come a long way from those first wobbly bubbles of life, the truth is, we're still carrying their legacy. Your mitochondria, they're descendants of those engulfed bacteria. Your DNA? A rolling history of successful experiments and lucky breaks. Even your cell squabbles over resources, well, that's a tradition billions of years old. So the next time you stub your toe or forget where you put your keys, just remember, your body is doing its best. It was never built to be perfect. It was built to survive. And considering how it all started, that's nothing short of miraculous. Once upon a time, life was a solo act. Each cell drifted through the world alone, doing its own thing, eating, dividing, and occasionally mutating in exciting or unfortunate ways. Think of it like the biological version of everyone working from home in their pajamas. Highly efficient, but not exactly collaborative. But something changed. At some point, probably around 2 billion years ago, some cells decided to try a bold new experiment: teamwork. And not just in the let's temporarily hang out and split this food kind of way. We're talking full-time, no-going-back biological group projects where everyone has a role and no one gets to just coast. This was the dawn of multicellularity, and it was one of the biggest evolutionary upgrades in the history of life. Now you might be thinking, why would a cell want to share power? And the answer is, it didn't at first. Cells are notoriously independent creatures, but evolution, being the patient sculptor that it is, found a few clever ways to get them to cooperate. One of the first baby steps toward multicellularity was the formation of colonies, groups of genetically identical cells sticking together after division. They weren't quite working together yet, but they were at least coexisting. Picture it like a bunch of introverts forming a book club. They're in the same room, but everyone's still kind of doing their own thing. Over time, though, these colonies started getting organized. Cells began specializing. One might handle digestion, another might be better at moving the group around, and yet another might focus solely on reproduction. This kind of division of labor was a game changer. It allowed organisms to grow bigger, live longer, and do more complicated things. Of course, this also meant that cells had to learn to trust each other. In a multicellular body, one rebellious cell going rogue can be disastrous. Looking at you, cancer. So over evolutionary time, cells developed mechanisms to communicate, coordinate, and keep each other in check. Kind of like a microscopic HR department. A key player in this cellular society building was cell adhesion. This is the ability of cells to stick together using proteins on their surfaces. Without these molecular Velcro strips, you'd still be a loose collection of cells sliding around like a bag of jelly beans. Then came cell signaling, ways for cells to send messages and respond to their environment. Hey, we need more oxygen over here, or stop growing, we're full, or time to divide. It was the dawn of intercellular gossip, and it was crucial. Imagine trying to coordinate a construction project if none of the workers spoke the same language. Evolution solved that by developing molecular message boards. As cells got better at sticking together and talking to each other, some lineages took the leap into fully integrated bodies. One of the earliest examples, sponges. Yes, sponges. The humble filter-feeding bathroom mascots of the animal kingdom. They're among the simplest multicellular animals we know of. No organs, no nerves, but they've got different types of cells working together to keep things flowing. Slightly later came creatures with true tissues, organized layers of cells that perform specific tasks. This allowed for more efficient feeding, movement, and eventually even thinking, though to be fair, that last one took a while. A big part of multicellularity's success was symmetry. Not the kind you find in perfect eyebrows, but biological symmetry, how body plans are organized. Early multicellular organisms came in all kinds of shapes, but two types of symmetry stood out. Radial symmetry, like jellyfish or sea anemones, where body parts are arranged around a central axis. Great for drifting and sensing things in all directions. Bilateral symmetry, where there's a left side and a right side, like us. This setup is ideal for movement in a specific direction, with a head to lead the way. It was a major innovation that would eventually lead to the development of complex nervous systems, eyes, and millions of years later, headphones. With symmetry came cephalization, a fancy term meaning putting the important stuff in the front. Sense organs and brains, or proto-brains, started to cluster in one end of the body, which helped creatures interact with their environment more efficiently. It's like your cells realized, if we're going to be moving forward, maybe our eyes and brain shouldn't be in the rear. These early innovations set the stage for the Cambrian explosion, a future evolutionary fireworks display of bizarre and wonderful body plans. But even before that burst of biodiversity, multicellularity had proven itself as a winning strategy. It allowed life to become bigger, stranger, and more ambitious. It led to the formation of tissues, organs, and systems. It laid the groundwork for every plant, animal, and fungi we know today. And yes, it's the reason you can sit there now, listening to this video, with a body made of trillions of cells that all decided, against their solitary instincts, to work together for the greater good of you. Of course, this system isn't flawless. Multicellularity comes with baggage, cancer, aging, autoimmune misfires. But on the whole, it was a gamble that paid off spectacularly. So next time you admire a tree or pet a cat, or even just scratch your own elbow, remember, that action is the result of countless cells playing their part in a silent, symphonic collaboration. A tradition that started billions of years ago when a few lonely cells decided they were better together. Let's take a moment to appreciate your spine. That slender column of bone running down your back isn't just there to help you slouch while scrolling on your phone. It's the structural marvel that allows you to walk, dance, hug, and even nod thoughtfully at random trivia like jellyfish don't have spines. Which is true, by the way. But where did this marvel of engineering come from? To understand that, we have to go way, way back, long before humans, mammals, or even fish. The story of the spine begins with a creature that had no bones at all. Let's talk about the notochord. Roughly 500 to 550 million years ago, during a time when most animals were still soft, squishy, and not terribly organized, some worm-like critters developed a stiff but flexible rod running down their backs. This rod, the notochord, wasn't bone. It was more like cartilage, but it gave these creatures something new: structure. Imagine trying to swim through jelly without a paddle. That's what life was like before the notochord. With it, these early swimmers could contract muscles on either side of their body and actually go somewhere. Evolution was thrilled. These notochord-bearing animals belong to a group we call chordates, which, surprise, includes us. If you've ever wondered what you have in common with a sea squirt, well, there you go. Chordates were the first animals to show the basic blueprint of a backbone, a central nerve cord, a tail, at least during development, and gill slits. Yes, even in humans, briefly before birth. Eventually, some of these notochord creatures took the next big step. They started forming vertebrae, little segments of bone or cartilage that wrapped around the nerve cord for protection and support. Voila! The vertebrate was born. This was huge, literally. With a bony support system, animals could grow larger, move more efficiently, and protect their delicate nerve cords from life's little mishaps, like bumping into rocks, predators, or each other. And let's be honest, a skeleton is just a really handy thing to hang muscles and nerves onto. These early vertebrates were still living in water. Think armored, jawless fish, not exactly cover models, but revolutionary in their own right. Over time, vertebrates diversified. Some developed jaws, good for lunch. Some developed paired fins, good for steering toward lunch. And others evolved into the ancestors of amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Quite the family reunion. But back to the spine. Why is it such a big deal? For one, it acts as your body's main support column. Your head, ribs, limbs, all of it connects back to your spine. Without it, you'd be a pile of parts. A charming pile, perhaps, but not one that could do yoga. It also houses the spinal cord, your body's communication superhighway. This bundle of nerves carries messages between your brain and the rest of your body. Want to wiggle your toes? Your brain sends the order down the spine. Stub your toe? The pain message rushes right back up. It's a constant two-way conversation, and your spine is the cable line holding it all together. Now, our modern spines are marvels of evolutionary compromise. They're strong but flexible, protective yet mobile. But they're also a little flawed. For instance, humans didn't originally evolve to walk upright. Our spine was shaped for moving on all fours. Standing up was like converting a suspension bridge into a skyscraper. It works, but there are consequences, like lower back pain, and herniated discs, and the fact that you sometimes make that groaning noise when you get out of a chair. Still, walking upright had major advantages. It freed our hands, changed how we gave birth, and probably even influenced how we think. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's appreciate how the humble notochord evolved into the backbone of the animal kingdom, literally. Even creatures you wouldn't expect have a version of this system. Birds? Check. Snakes? Yep. Sharks? Their skeletons are cartilage, but they've got spinal columns too. Every time you see an animal doing something that involves coordinated movement, whether it's a dog chasing its tail or a squirrel making a death-defying leap from one branch to another, you're watching the backbone in action. It's not just a bone, it's a symbol of biological ambition. The spine allowed creatures to become faster, smarter, and more versatile. It let us climb, swim, sprint, and eventually sit in chairs overthinking social interactions. And here's something humbling. Your spine, with all its complexity, was built over millions of years by slow, incremental changes. No single creature ever decided to have a spine. It just worked a little better each time. A mutation here, a tiny improvement there, passed on through generations until, eventually, a small group of bony-finned fish were carrying the skeletal blueprint of all vertebrates to come, including us. So next time your back aches after a long day, or you crack your neck and hear that oddly satisfying pop, take a moment to thank your ancestors, the floppy, jelly-bodied wanderers of the ancient seas who started us on the long, bumpy road toward structure, movement, and strength. Because when life needed a little more backbone, evolution delivered. If your legs ever feel tired, blame the fish. Not just any fish though, very specific fish from about 375 million years ago who decided they were done with ocean life and tried something different. They didn't pack bags, but they did pack bones, sturdy ones, and began the awkward, soggy process of becoming land animals. This was one of the most dramatic transitions in the history of life on Earth. A group of aquatic vertebrates, already sporting backbones and fins, looked at the land, with all its bugs and breathable air, and said, sure, why not? Let's back up a bit. Before this bold evolutionary experiment, the ocean was teeming with life. Fish were doing great. They'd evolved jaws, huge, scales, stylish and practical, and swim bladders for buoyancy, the biological version of cruise control. But land was largely untouched, except by plants and some brave invertebrates like bugs and early arthropods. The stage was set. All evolution needed was a creature bold, or lucky, enough to bridge the gap. Enter Tiktaalik, the poster child for the water-to-land transition. Tiktaalik looked like a fish with a flat head and a neck. Yes, a neck. Fish don't usually have those, but Tiktaalik had places to go. It also had fins with bones that resemble a basic arm structure. One bone, two bones, little bones, and digits. Sound familiar? That's the same pattern your arms and legs follow. Inside your limbs, you're carrying a modified version of a fish fin. Congratulations! Now, Tiktaalik wasn't walking around like a lizard. It likely flopped and wiggled in shallow water, using its strong fins to prop itself up or drag itself along the muddy bottom, kind of like nature's first attempt at a push-up. Why bother though? Why leave the comfy safety of water? Well, the answer probably involves a mix of environmental pressures, drying ponds, competition for food, or the promise of untapped snacks on land might have nudged some fishy pioneers toward the shore. Shallow waters favoured creatures that could support themselves and gulp air, especially when oxygen levels in the water were low. Those with rudimentary lungs and strong fins had a serious edge. Yes, lungs. Another twist in the story. Many fish back then had already developed primitive lungs to supplement their gills. It was kind of like having a backup generator in case the gills weren't cutting it. Some of these lungs eventually evolved into modern lungs, in us, and others became swim bladders, in many modern fish. Evolution is thrifty that way, always repurposing old equipment. So now we've got fish with lungs, strong fins, and necks. Over time, some of these aquatic adventurers became amphibians, the first true vertebrates to live on land. Think salamander-like creatures that still needed water to lay eggs and keep their skin moist, but were increasingly comfortable on dry ground. This new world was full of opportunities. Land was a buffet of bugs and plants, and there weren't many vertebrate predators yet. For early tetrapods, four-limbed vertebrates, it was paradise. Slippery, bug-filled paradise. To fully thrive on land, bodies had to adapt in major ways. First, limbs. Fins flattened out and grew joints, shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, ankles. This allowed creatures to push up, move forward, and eventually walk. Evolution didn't invent legs from scratch. It modified fins, piece by piece over millions of years, guided only by what helped these creatures survive and breed. Next, spines and ribs got sturdier. On land, gravity is a lot pushier than in water. Imagine going from floating to suddenly having to support your entire body weight. You'd need better architecture too. And so vertebrae thickened. Ribs expanded to protect lungs and internal organs. The whole skeleton bulked up. Skin also had to change. In water, you don't worry about drying out. On land, it's a constant threat. Amphibians still struggled with this, needing moist environments to survive. But over time, descendants would evolve thicker, more waterproof skin, like reptiles and mammals today. Let's not forget senses too. Sound travels differently in air than in water. Eyes had to adjust to different light levels. Smell became more important. Land dwellers needed new ways to navigate their environment, so evolution responded with improved inner ears, better noses, and eyelids. Fish don't blink, but we do. Thank amphibians for that little upgrade. The land was a whole new game, and life rose to the challenge. Over millions of years, amphibians gave rise to reptiles, which were even better suited for dry environments. Reptiles, in turn, led to birds and mammals. Each group carried the blueprints of those first finned pioneers, stretching them, remixing them, adapting them to every possible niche. But underneath it all, the structure remained. One bone, two bones, many bones, digits. Whether you're a bat, a whale, or a person clicking a video on YouTube, your limbs trace back to those early fish and their experimental fins. It's a wild thought, isn't it? That your hands, capable of writing poems, tying shoelaces, and opening pickle jars, are built on an ancient plan scribbled in the mud by fish who once flopped onto land in search of something new. So the next time you go for a walk, take a second to thank your distant relatives in the Devonian period. They had no idea what they were starting, but they kicked off one of the greatest transformations in natural history. They turned fins into feet and forever changed the course of life on Earth. Your skin might not seem like the most glamorous part of your body. It doesn't get the same love as the brain or the heart, and no one's writing poetry about epidermal cells. But make no mistake, your skin is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. A flexible shield, a thermostat, a communication device, a sense organ, and your first line of defense against the big, wild world. All that, and it still manages to itch at the worst possible times. But let's rewind, because once again, evolution didn't start with perfection. It started with something much simpler, a membrane. In the earliest forms of life, the outer layer was just a thin, oily bubble. It kept the inside in and the outside out. That was its whole resume. And for single-celled organisms, that was enough. But once life started getting multicellular and venturing into more complicated environments, like say dry land, those membranes needed a serious upgrade. Enter skin. The first true multicellular animals likely had simple layers of cells forming their outer coverings, what scientists call epithelial tissue. This thin layer was more than just a wrapper, it was a gateway. It let in nutrients, sensed the environment, and protected the delicate inner cells. Think of it as the first version of a touchscreen, primitive but with potential. As animals grew more complex and began colonizing new environments, skin had to step up its game. For aquatic creatures, the main goals were slipperiness and protection. Fish skin, for example, is covered in mucus and scales. The mucus helps reduce friction while swimming and also wards off parasites, like an underwater hand sanitizer. The scales act as armor, flexible enough for movement but tough enough to avoid turning into someone else's lunch. But it was the move to land that truly changed the game. Dry air is a relentless enemy to delicate cells. Without protection, water evaporates right out of tissues, and with it, life. So terrestrial animals needed skin that could seal in moisture while still allowing them to breathe, feel, and interact with the world. It was a tall order, but evolution delivered, one layer at a time. In amphibians, skin stayed relatively thin and permeable. They still rely on moisture to breathe through their skin, which is why you rarely see a frog vacationing in a desert. But reptiles? They brought in the heavy-duty gear, keratin. Keratin is a tough, fibrous protein that acts like biological armor. Reptile skin is layered with keratin, which prevents water loss and allows them to survive in dry, sunny environments. It's also what forms scales, feathers, hair, claws, and even horns, a protein so versatile it could open its own hardware store. Mammals, including us, took a slightly different approach. Our skin has multiple layers, epidermis, dermis, hypodermis, and each plays a specific role. The epidermis provides a waterproof barrier. The dermis holds nerves, blood vessels, and sweat glands. And the hypodermis stores fat and helps regulate temperature. Together, they form a kind of Swiss Army knife that protects, cools, senses, and repairs itself with remarkable efficiency. Now, speaking of temperature, let's talk about sweat. It may not be the most glamorous bodily function, but it's one of the most clever. Humans are among the sweatiest creatures on the planet, not because we're anxious, though that too, but because sweating allows us to cool down efficiently. Other animals pant, shade themselves, or avoid the heat. We go for a jog, turn pink, and become walking fountains. It's a messy but effective system, and it's part of why humans are such great endurance runners. Our skin gives us an edge in the marathon of life, even if it makes hugs awkward afterward. Then there's hair. Another invention courtesy of keratin. Hair originally evolved for insulation, to trap air and keep body heat from escaping. Over time, it picked up extra jobs: camouflage, sensory detection, social signaling, and in humans, occasional existential crises. And let's not forget pigmentation, the many hues of human skin created by a pigment called melanin. Melanin protects skin cells from UV radiation by absorbing sunlight and reducing the risk of DNA damage. Populations near the equator evolved darker skin rich in melanin as protection against intense sunlight. Those in northern regions evolved lighter skin to better absorb sunlight and produce vitamin D. It's a brilliant example of evolution responding to environment, not with judgment, but with practicality. Skin also plays a huge role in communication. It flushes when we're embarrassed, pales when we're afraid, sweats when we're nervous, and wrinkles when we laugh. It's our body's billboard, an ever-changing canvas of emotions, health, and age. No surprise that so many social signals are literally skin deep. But for all its brilliance, skin isn't invincible. It burns, tears, scars, and sags. And yes, it gets pimples. It's constantly growing and shedding, millions of cells every day. In fact, most of the dust in your home? Dead skin. Evolution didn't see Swiffers coming. Still, the fact that your skin is even doing this at all, growing, healing, protecting, communicating, is extraordinary. It's not just a wrapper. It's an ecosystem. A microbiome of bacteria, fungi, and tiny mites, don't worry, they're mostly harmless, that live in harmony with your body. Think of your skin as an organic biodome with its own cast of microscopic roommates. So the next time you look at your arm or your reflection, remember, you're seeing the product of hundreds of millions of years of adaptation. Your skin is tough, clever, responsive, and deeply connected to the journey life has taken from ocean goo to grocery queue. It may not always cooperate when you're sunburned or breaking out or trying on jeans that forgot what comfortable means, but it's there, always working, always renewing, always whispering the story of how your ancestors learned to live outside the sea. And that's kind of beautiful. Let's take a quiet moment to appreciate your senses. The world is a chaos of light, sound, motion, pressure, temperature, chemicals, and the occasional surprise Lego on the floor. And somehow, your body interprets all of that, instantly and constantly. You see color, hear music, feel warmth, taste chocolate, smell rain. You, dear listener, are a full-time sensory sponge. And it's all thanks to evolution's very ambitious plan, make sense of the world or get eaten. Sensing the environment is one of life's most ancient tasks. Even single-celled organisms like bacteria can detect changes in their surroundings, chemicals, heat, light, and respond. They might not write poetry about sunsets, but they do know which direction dinner is in. That's the foundation. As animals evolved into multicellular forms and then into more mobile, complex creatures, they needed more advanced sensory equipment. The more you can sense, the better you can navigate, find food, avoid danger, and attract a mate. Evolution took that as a challenge. Let's start with the eyes. Ah yes, the windows to the soul. Or, more scientifically, the squishy, light-sensitive organs that turned ancient blobs into precise navigators. Eyes didn't just appear overnight. They started as photoreceptor cells, simple proteins that responded to light. Even flatworms have these, patches of cells that let them detect light and dark. Enough to avoid danger or seek shelter, but not enough to recognize your neighbor's face. Over millions of years, these patches became cup-shaped to detect the direction of light. Then the cup deepened and a pinhole formed, kind of like a primitive camera. Eventually, some lucky lineages developed lenses, which could focus light and form sharper images. This was the evolutionary equivalent of going from a blurry Polaroid to 4K HD. By the time we reach insects, mollusks, and vertebrates, eyes had diversified into wildly different structures. Some, like compound eyes in flies, are great for detecting motion and flickers. Others, like camera-style eyes in humans and squids, are designed for detail and focus. Fun fact, human eyes have a blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina. Squids don't. They evolved a similar eye design independently, but without the awkward wiring. Yes, squids have better eyes. Let that sink in while you fumble for your glasses. Next up, ears. Hearing is a bit trickier to evolve because sound is a vibration in the air or water. Detecting those vibrations requires some form of mechanical sensing, usually little hairs or membranes that wiggle when hit by sound waves. Early aquatic animals could detect low-frequency vibrations through their skin and bones, but with time, more specialized structures evolved. In fish, parts of the skull and swim bladder help pick up sound. In land animals, evolution got creative. Amphibians and reptiles developed eardrums, thin membranes that vibrate when hit by sound. Mammals took this a step further with middle ear bones, tiny structures that transmit those vibrations to the inner ear. What's wild is that these bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes, actually evolved from jaw bones in reptilian ancestors. Your ability to enjoy Beethoven is thanks to bones that used to be used for chomping. The inner ear also helps with balance. Those little fluid-filled canals in your head, they tell your brain whether you're spinning, tilting, or standing still. It's how your body knows where up is, except when you step off a merry-go-round, in which case it gives up entirely. Now let's talk about smell and taste, your chemical senses. These evolved to detect molecules floating through air or water. Smell or olfaction is one of the oldest senses, and it's still vital. Even bacteria can detect chemicals. In humans, smell is linked to memory and emotion, probably because in our ancestors, associating a particular scent with danger or safety was literally a matter of life and death. Our olfactory receptors sit in the nose, picking up molecules and sending signals to the brain. Humans have about 400 types of smell receptors, but that's nothing compared to dogs, who have over 1,000. Basically, we smell a cake and go, while a dog smells the flour, eggs, vanilla, and your neighbour's cat fur that somehow got into the batter. Taste or gustation is similarly ancient. It detects 5 main flavours: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. These tastes are evolutionary shortcuts. Sweet signals energy, sugar. Salty means essential minerals. Sour might warn of spoilage. Bitter often signals poison. And umami, found in meats and broths, means protein. Together, taste and smell work as a team. Without smell, your sense of taste is surprisingly dull. That's why food tastes bland when you have a cold. Your nose is the secret ingredient. And then there's touch, the first sense to evolve and the one we never lose. Touch is more than just skin contact. Your skin is packed with receptors for pressure, vibration, temperature, stretch, and pain. Some respond to a mosquito landing. Others respond to a hug. Some scream at you when you touch a hot pan. All of them are constantly reporting to your brain in the background. Touch is also central to social bonding. Grooming, holding hands, hugging. It's a universal language. For many animals, physical touch is critical to comfort, connection, and survival. A mother's touch calms a baby. A cat's purring body calms, well, almost anyone. There's even a special nerve fibre in your skin called the C-tactile afferent, which responds specifically to gentle, slow stroking. Think of it as your body's that feels nice circuit. It's believed to play a key role in emotional well-being. Your senses are how you experience the world, but they're also how the world experiences you. A smile seen, a voice heard, a hand held, a scent remembered. Evolution built these systems not just for survival, but for connection. And though they evolved from humble beginnings, light spots, vibrating hairs, chemical detectors in water, they've become a symphony of perception, constantly tuning you to your environment and those around you. So the next time you smell rain, hear music, taste chocolate, or feel the sun on your skin, know this: you're enjoying the fruits of billions of years of blind experimentation. Evolution didn't plan any of this, but somehow it gave us a way to see beauty, feel warmth, and hear the laughter of someone we love. And if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. Take a deep breath. Seriously, inhale and exhale. What you just did is part of a grand evolutionary tale, one that connects you to lungfish, lizards, and even creatures that breathe through their skin. Your lungs and heart may feel like ordinary parts of you, background players in the daily drama of being alive, but they are ancient and intricate inventions, honed over hundreds of millions of years. And they have one job above all: keep the oxygen flowing. Let's start at the beginning: gas exchange. Even the earliest single-celled organisms needed oxygen, or more precisely, they needed some way to extract energy from their environment. Oxygen just happens to be a fantastically efficient fuel booster. It lets cells extract far more energy from nutrients than they could without it. The catch? It has to get into the body first. For simple life forms, that wasn't a problem. They just absorbed gases through their cell membranes, like little biological sponges. But once creatures got thicker, larger, and more ambitious, they needed a better system. Enter gills. Gills are thin, feathery structures designed to pull oxygen from water. Water flows over them, oxygen diffuses in, carbon dioxide diffuses out, and the fish swims happily along. Gills are wonderfully efficient, as long as you stay in water. On land, they collapse and dry out like soggy paper fans. Not ideal. So when some adventurous animals started poking their heads above the waterline, evolution needed a new approach. And that's when lungs took center stage. Now, lungs didn't just appear from nowhere. In fact, many early fish already had primitive lungs or lung-like sacs. These help them gulp air in oxygen-poor waters, a useful trick if your pond is drying up or crowded with other gill breathers. One group of these fish, the lobe-finned fish, including our old friend Tiktaalik, gave rise to all land-dwelling vertebrates. And yes, their basic lung design, still in you. The lungs in humans are basically two giant squishy sponges. They work through negative pressure. You contract your diaphragm, which pulls air in, and then relax to push it out. Inside, they branch like trees, ending in tiny air sacs called alveoli, where gas exchange actually happens. They're thin, wet, and surrounded by blood vessels, making them ideal for oxygen to sneak into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide to sneak out. But lungs are only half the story. Once you've got oxygen, you need to move it around. That's where the heart and circulatory system come in. The earliest animals had no need for a heart. They were tiny, and diffusion could get oxygen where it needed to go. But larger animals needed a pump, something to push nutrients, gases, and waste products around a bigger body. Evolution obliged, and the first simple hearts appeared, basically muscular tubes that contracted rhythmically. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. As organisms got more complex, so did their plumbing. Fish hearts have two chambers, one to receive blood, the other to pump it. The blood flows from the heart to the gills, picks up oxygen, then travels through the rest of the body before returning. It's a loop, but a simple one. Amphibians and reptiles stepped things up with three-chambered hearts, separating oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood more efficiently. Then came birds and mammals, with their fancy four-chambered hearts, two atria, two ventricles, and a full split between the oxygenated and deoxygenated circuits. That division, it's a game changer. It means your lungs can send freshly oxygenated blood straight to your brain, muscles, and vital organs without it getting diluted. This makes warm-blooded life possible. Birds and mammals need a lot of energy to maintain body temperature, and a four-chambered heart is like having a turbocharged engine. It's the Ferrari of hearts, but evolution built it for endurance, not speed. Speaking of blood, let's give it a round of applause, or at least a slow pulse. Blood is your body's delivery service, carrying oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and waste. It's mostly water, but also packed with red blood cells for oxygen transport, white blood cells for defense, platelets for clotting, and a cocktail of dissolved substances. If you've ever felt your heart pound after exercise or stress, you've experienced your circulatory system shifting into high gear, moving more blood, more oxygen, more you. But the real hero in this story, hemoglobin. This iron-rich protein lives inside red blood cells and binds to oxygen like a molecular taxi. It picks up O2 in the lungs, carries it through your arteries, and drops it off wherever it's needed. Then it grabs some CO2 and heads back to the lungs for a round trip. Efficient, reliable. Kind of like a very tiny Uber driver, but without the awkward small talk. Your circulatory system is also tightly linked with your immune system, your endocrine system, and your ability to heal and grow. It's a fully integrated, 24/7, self-repairing infrastructure that responds to every beat, every breath, every need. Now, of course, it's not perfect. Our upright posture causes blood to fight gravity on the way back up, which is why your feet can swell, and why standing up too fast might turn your vision into a brief fireworks display. Our hearts can wear out, arteries can clog, and lungs can scar. But that's the price of complexity. And most of the time, they work with astonishing reliability. And here's something to marvel at. Your body does all of this automatically. You don't have to think about breathing, though now you are, sorry. You don't have to direct your heartbeats. Your body just knows. It's inherited wisdom, passed down from fish that swam in shallow streams, from reptiles basking in the sun, from mammals sprinting through forests. Every breath you take echoes with that evolutionary past. So the next time you sigh, or sing, or yawn before sleep, take a moment to thank the lungs that rose from the mud, the hearts that beat in ancient fish, and the blood that carries a story older than words. The breath of life didn't come all at once. It came in ripples, in pulses, in quiet little upgrades. And eventually, it became you. Your brain is about the size of a melon and made mostly of fat, water, and a lot of optimism. And yet, it can compose music, remember where you left your keys, sometimes, and imagine what it's like to ride a comet through space, all while regulating your breathing, blinking, and blood pressure, without a single complaint. But the journey to that powerful, squishy supercomputer inside your skull was anything but quick. In fact, it's one of the longest, most complex stories in evolutionary history. Let's rewind. The first animals to develop nervous systems weren't exactly intellectuals. Think jellyfish. No brain, no spine, but a net of nerves that could sense touch, light, and gravity. This nerve net was just enough to let them respond to their surroundings, contract when touched, drift toward light, avoid becoming dinner. Simple, but effective. If jellyfish wrote performance reviews, they'd give it 5 stars for effort. Then came cephalization, the clustering of nerve cells at one end of the body. This was a game changer. Suddenly there was a front of the animal where decisions could be made. It's the reason your head is on one end and not in the middle of your torso, like some kind of biological snowman. With cephalization came the earliest brains, dense bundles of neurons that could process information and coordinate responses. Even worms have simple brains, Flatworms, for instance, have paired nerve cords and a basic control center. Not exactly solving math problems, but they can find food and learn basic paths in a maze, which, depending on the day, is more than some of us can say. The central nervous system, a brain and spinal cord, developed in early chordates. This system let organisms sense, interpret, and respond to stimuli faster and more efficiently. A message like, "That thing is trying to eat me," could be processed quickly, and a muscular, "Get me out of here," could follow immediately. As animals evolved, their nervous systems got more sophisticated. Vertebrates developed specialized brain regions, areas for vision, smell, motor control, memory, and eventually, though not always conveniently, introspection and anxiety. One key development was the cerebrum, the large wrinkly part of your brain responsible for thinking, planning, imagining, and trying to fall asleep right when it remembers that embarrassing thing you did 8 years ago. In fish and amphibians, the brain is pretty straightforward, just enough to manage swimming, hunting, and basic life support. Reptiles added complexity with more advanced vision and memory functions. But it was mammals and birds who took brain building to the next level. The mammalian brain, especially the neocortex, allowed for social behavior, tool use, problem solving, and eventually, you guessed it, language. And that's where things get really interesting. Language isn't just about words. It's about symbols, grammar, nuance, and even lies. It allows knowledge to be stored and passed on without DNA. That's an evolutionary shortcut so powerful it changed everything. Culture, history, science, bedtime podcasts, you're experiencing the result right now. But how does it all work? At the cellular level, your brain runs on neurons, specialized cells that send electrical impulses down their lengths and across tiny gaps called synapses. There are about 86 billion neurons in your brain, each forming thousands of connections. It's not just a network, it's a galaxy of thought. Neurons don't just fire randomly either. They form circuits that learn and adapt over time. That's how habits form, how memories solidify, and how you can eventually find your way to the fridge in the dark without opening your eyes. It's also why you can learn a song, forget it, and then instantly remember every word when it plays at a party 10 years later. The brain also regulates emotions, which are ancient tools for survival. Fear, joy, anger, love. These feelings helped our ancestors avoid danger, bond with others, and decide whether a situation called for fighting, fleeing, or making friends over berries. And while the brain gets most of the credit, your nervous system is a whole body affair. Your peripheral nerves reach into every finger and toe, carrying signals to and from the brain. Your autonomic nervous system handles the stuff you don't have to think about, like digesting lunch, pumping your heart, or sweating when you remember something awkward from middle school. In fact, there's a whole second brain in your gut, a complex web of neurons called the enteric nervous system. It can function independently and may even influence your mood. Yes, those gut feelings, they're not just poetic, they're neurological. Of course, for all its wonders, the brain isn't perfect. It's prone to errors, illusions, and the occasional existential crisis. It confuses correlation with causation. It sees faces in toast. It makes you forget why you walked into a room, but remember the lyrics to a toothpaste commercial from 1998. But those quirks are part of the package. The brain evolved not to be flawless, but to be useful enough, fast, flexible, and good at surviving. It's been shaped by millions of years of challenges and adaptations, from hunting in savannas, to writing Shakespeare, to trying to figure out how to unsubscribe from that one newsletter you never signed up for. And now here you are, thinking about thinking, using a brain to understand brains, a loop of self-awareness that evolution stumbled into and never looked back. So the next time you solve a puzzle, cry at a movie, or drift off into a vivid dream, remember, you're carrying a legacy older than language, older than reason, older than memory itself. A legacy of reflexes and neurons that slowly learned over eons to feel, to imagine, and finally, to understand. And that's a beautiful thing to sleep on. Raise your hand. No, really. Give it a little wiggle. That delicate motion, that little flick of the wrist or the stretch of your fingers. It's a simple action, but it's built on hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary fine-tuning. Behind every button you press, every page you turn, every affectionate pat on the head, lies one of evolution's most dazzling inventions, the hand. Or more broadly, limbs with dexterity, a skill set that gave creatures the ability to grasp, grip, poke, throw, and eventually type out bedtime YouTube comments. But to truly understand how hands came to be, we have to go back, not just to primates, but to fish. Yes, fish. Again. Remember back in Chapter 4, when we met creatures like Tiktaalik, the transitional species that had fins with bones inside? Those fins already contained the basic architecture: one large bone, humerus, followed by two smaller bones, radius and ulna, then lots of tiny bones forming something like a wrist. That layout is the template for every arm, wing, flipper and paw that came afterward. Evolution doesn't redesign from scratch, it just remodels. As vertebrates conquered land, their fins evolved into limbs, a shift that was more about mechanics than aesthetics. Limbs allowed animals to push, climb, crawl, and eventually walk. But somewhere along the evolutionary highway, some of those limbs became less about locomotion and more about manipulation. Enter the grasp. In many animals, limbs became tools for grabbing branches, prey, mates, or that one unreachable itch. Early reptiles and amphibians had toes and claws, but true dexterity didn't kick off until mammals came along. Mammals developed digits that were more flexible and sensitive. Their limbs became capable not just of movement, but of delicate control. And nowhere was this more apparent than in the primates, a group that includes monkeys, apes, and of course, humans. Primates are hand-focused animals. They have opposable thumbs, meaning the thumb can touch the other fingers, a seemingly small feature that opened up a world of possibility. Try picking up a pencil without your thumb. Go on, we'll wait. Not easy, is it? The opposable thumb is a marvel. It lets us grip tightly, but also precisely. We can carry heavy bags and thread a needle. We can build skyscrapers and peel oranges. That flexibility made us incredibly adaptable and successful. Of course, humans aren't the only ones with clever hands. Other primates use tools too. Chimpanzees use sticks to fish termites out of mounds. Capuchin monkeys crack nuts with rocks. Orangutans make umbrellas out of leaves. These behaviors aren't just impressive, they reveal a connection between manual skill and mental capacity. As hands became more capable, brains had to follow suit, and vice versa. The more you can do with your hands, the more problems you can solve, and the more your brain needs to process those solutions. It's a feedback loop of innovation. Better hands require better brains, which then demand even better hands. Eventually, those hands weren't just climbing trees or scooping food, they were carving tools. Stone tools are some of the earliest artifacts of human ancestors, simple flakes chipped from rock to cut meat or shape wood. Over time, our ancestors refined their techniques, sharper blades, specialized points, even throwing spears. And to make these tools, you need hands that are strong, but also precise. You need fingers that can apply pressure in just the right spot. You need fine motor control, a skill most animals don't have, and which humans have taken to extraordinary heights. And tools weren't just for survival, they sparked culture. Tool use led to cooking. Cooking led to softer food, smaller jaws, and perhaps more energy for growing bigger brains. Bigger brains led to language, art, and everything from sewing needles to saxophones. It all circles back to hands, these clever little paddles of potential, shaped not just for action, but for expression. With hands, we write, draw, gesture, sign, sculpt, and strum. We build bridges and braid hair. We cradle the head of a sleeping baby, or gently scratch behind a pet's ears. Hands are instruments of both utility and emotion. They carry not just things, but meaning. Of course, we've also evolved incredible touch sensitivity in our hands. The fingertips are among the most sensitive areas of the body, packed with nerve endings that allow us to detect the texture of sand, the weight of a coin, the flutter of a page in a breeze. Your sense of touch isn't just physical, it's emotional. It grounds you in the world. It makes life feel real. And all of it, the thumbs, the nerves, the flexible joints and expressive motions, can be traced back through time. From stone tools to smartphones, from brachiating through trees to swiping through playlists, your hands carry the entire legacy of tetrapod evolution. A design billions of years in the making, still improving, still adapting. So next time you wave goodbye, high-five a friend, or rest your chin in your palm while you drift off to sleep, remember, that simple motion is not so simple. It's the end result of creatures that climbed, built, shaped and dreamed. And in a way, every hand gesture is a quiet echo of the first fin that touched land. Let's take a moment to thank your digestive system. Quietly, without fuss, it's been working since before you were born. Turning sandwiches into cells, converting apples into energy, processing burritos with bravery. It's not glamorous, but it's essential and deeply ancient. Your digestive system, as modern and hopefully efficient as it may seem, is the product of an evolutionary journey that began over 1 billion years ago with one very basic question: how do I turn food into me? In the earliest days of life, the answer was simple. Single-celled organisms absorbed nutrients directly through their membranes. If you're only a few micrometers wide, osmosis and diffusion are enough to bring in fuel. There's no chewing, no burping, just molecules slipping in and keeping you alive. But as life grew more complex and multicellular, that wasn't enough anymore. Larger organisms needed a way to bring in food, break it down, and send it where it was needed. Evolution's solution? The tube. Yes, the humble digestive tube, open at one end, closed at the other, or ideally open at both. It's one of the most elegant and enduring designs in biology. Food goes in one end, nutrients are absorbed along the way, and waste comes out the other. A classic, a masterpiece. Nature's original conveyor belt. Early animals like worms were among the first to show this complete digestive tract, and once that model took hold, evolution ran with it. Over millions of years, different species customized the tube to fit their diets, environments, and lifestyles. Let's start at the front, the mouth. Mouths evolved in many shapes and forms, from jellyfish tentacle mouths to bird beaks to human lips. But the core job is the same: mechanical digestion. That's just a fancy way of saying chewing. Breaking food into smaller pieces increases the surface area, making it easier for enzymes to get to work. And yes, those enzymes begin in the saliva. Your spit is more than just mouth moisturizer. It contains amylase, an enzyme that starts breaking down carbohydrates before you've even swallowed. It's your body's way of saying, "Don't worry, I've got this," while you're still enjoying your toast. Next, the food travels down the esophagus, thanks to peristalsis, a series of muscular contractions that push it along like a friendly, squishy slip and slide. Contrary to popular belief, you could eat upside down and still swallow just fine. Gravity is helpful, but your esophagus is the real MVP. Then into the stomach, where things start to get serious. Your stomach is a muscular sac full of hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes. It churns and dissolves food into a paste called chyme, which is a lovely word for food goo. This acid bath not only breaks down food, it also kills most of the bacteria you've inadvertently swallowed along the way. You can thank your stomach for the fact that eating a dropped grape doesn't usually turn into a hospital visit. From the stomach, chyme moves into the small intestine, which is ironically very long, about 20 feet in the average adult. This is where the magic really happens. Enzymes from the pancreas and bile from the liver break down fats, proteins and carbs into absorbable molecules. And your intestinal walls, covered in millions of tiny finger-like projections called villi and microvilli. These increase surface area for maximum nutrient absorption. It's like turning the inside of a garden hose into the surface of a shag carpet. Efficient, if slightly unsettling. Nutrients get absorbed into your bloodstream and sent wherever they're needed. Glucose to power your muscles, amino acids to build proteins, fats for storage or insulation. The small intestine is the unsung hero of your entire metabolic system. Then we reach the large intestine, where things slow down. Here, the focus shifts from absorption to water recovery and waste management. The large intestine pulls out excess water and electrolytes, compacts what's left, and gets it ready for departure. Not the most glamorous job, but a vital one. It also houses your gut microbiome, trillions of bacteria that help with digestion, vitamin production, and even mood regulation. Yes, your gut and your brain are in constant conversation. This is the gut-brain axis, and it's very real. Ever had a gut feeling? Or lost your appetite from stress? That's your digestive system tuning into your emotional state. You might think with your brain, but your gut has plenty of opinions too. Over the course of evolution, different animals have adapted their digestive systems to wildly different diets. Carnivores like lions have short, acidic guts to digest meat quickly. Herbivores like cows have long intestines and sometimes extra stomachs to break down fibrous plant material. Some even ferment their food in chambers filled with microbes before digesting it. And then there are humans, proud omnivores. We have a middle ground digestive system. Not too long, not too short. A bit of acid, a bit of enzyme, a bit of everything. It lets us eat fruit, meat, grains, legumes, and occasionally things we probably shouldn't, like entire sleeves of cookies at 11 p.m. Over time, human digestion has co-evolved with cooking and culture. We started fire, softened our food, and changed the way our jaws and guts worked. Our brains grew, our teeth shrank, and our meals became social events as much as survival rituals. So much of what makes us human, our language, our rituals, our kitchens, revolves around what we eat and how we digest it. So next time you're enjoying a meal, or even just sipping tea before bed, remember, your body is running a highly sophisticated operation beneath the surface. From enzymes to acid, from esophagus to colon, every bite is part of a story that began with hungry microbes and ended with you. And that comforting feeling of a full belly and a quiet mind, that's evolution's way of saying, good job, you made it another day. Think about taking a walk. No, really, go ahead, stretching those legs, swinging those arms, feeling the heel strike, the roll of the foot, the gentle rhythm of motion. Now consider this. You are one of the very few creatures on Earth who can do that on 2 legs, and do it well. Walking upright isn't just a neat trick, it's one of the most defining, peculiar, and consequential features of being human. So why did we stand up in the first place? The short answer, nobody's completely sure. The long answer, it was probably a mix of environmental shifts, evolutionary opportunity, and a touch of, well, that sort of works, let's see where it goes. Let's rewind to a few million years ago, in the woodlands and grasslands of Africa. Our ancestors, much like modern apes, probably spent a good deal of time in trees, climbing, foraging, and avoiding the various toothy creatures below. But then came a change in climate. Forests began thinning into open savannas, trees became sparser, and for a primate trying to spot predators or reach distant fruit, being upright suddenly had some real advantages. Standing on 2 legs gave early hominins a better field of view, especially across tall grasses. It also freed up the hands, which was a game changer. Imagine the possibilities. You can carry food, use tools, hold a baby, or much later, dramatically point at a PowerPoint slide. But evolving upright walking, or bipedalism, wasn't just a matter of standing taller. It required a complete architectural redesign. First up, the spine. A quadruped's spine is mostly a straight bridge between front and back legs. Ours had to become an S-curve, shaped like a gentle spring, to support the upright weight of the torso and help absorb shock while walking. Great for balance, although it does mean we get fun little bonuses like lower back pain and slipped discs. Then there's the pelvis. To support our internal organs and stabilize our upright posture, it had to become shorter and broader. This made walking more efficient, but it also created a problem: childbirth. A narrower pelvis meant a tighter birth canal, while our increasingly larger brains meant bigger baby heads. The result? Evolution's most painful compromise. We also needed longer legs, angled femurs to keep our feet under us, and knees that could lock in place. Our feet transformed too. The opposable big toe, great for climbing trees, shifted forward to create a more stable platform. Arches developed to absorb the force of walking. Heel bones thickened for impact. Evolution essentially turned a climbing foot into a mobile shock absorber. And at the top of it all, the skull had to tilt and balance differently. Our foramen magnum, the hole where the spinal cord exits the skull, moved underneath rather than behind. This kept our heads balanced over our spines instead of jutting forward like a backpack that's sliding off. Put all of this together and you get a body designed, sometimes beautifully, sometimes frustratingly, for walking upright. Not running like a cheetah or climbing like a gibbon, but moving steadily across long distances, hands free, head high, mind ticking. And walk we did. Bipedalism let us roam farther, spot danger sooner, and carry things with us. Tools, food, babies, stories. It's no accident that some of the first known stone tools show up not long after upright walking became the norm. Free hands changed everything. They gave us the ability to shape our environment rather than just react to it. Interestingly, walking upright may have even helped our ancestors stay cool. In the blazing sun of the savannah, standing tall reduces the surface area exposed to direct heat, and it raises the body off the hot ground. It also makes sweating, one of our top-tier cooling systems, more effective, especially with less body hair. So yes, walking might be weird, but it was a survival tactic. Of course, bipedalism has its costs. We already mentioned back pain, but let's not forget knee injuries, hip problems, and the occasional falling on your face. Four-legged creatures are generally more stable, but we traded that for versatility, and in the end, it was a worthwhile gamble. Because once we started walking upright, a whole cascade of changes followed. We developed longer childhoods, since human babies are born less developed, thanks again, tight pelvis. This meant more time for learning, bonding, and social development. Our ancestors gathered around fires, shared food, told stories, all while sitting on those now vulnerable tailbones. Standing up was the spark, but everything else, language, tools, culture, was fuel. And here's something curious. Walking is hardwired into your brain. Babies show stepping reflexes before they can sit up. After a year or so of wobbly trial and error, they take their first steps, a moment celebrated by parents across the globe, not because it's rare, but because it's universal. Bipedalism is written into us, as surely as fingerprints. It's how we move through the world, how we migrated, survived, explored, and ultimately populated every continent. It's not flashy, like flying or echolocation, but it's persistent. It's determined. It's human. So the next time you walk to the kitchen, to the bus stop, or down a quiet path in the evening breeze, remember, you're performing a miracle of balance, coordination, and ancient engineering. You're not just moving, you're reenacting one of evolution's boldest experiments. And it worked. Let's take a look in the mirror, not just at your reflection, but at the intricate toolkit of expression that evolution has built into your face. Your eyebrows can ask questions without a word. Your lips can signal affection, amusement, or irritation. Your eyes can widen in surprise, or narrow in skepticism. And your voice? It's not just a sound, it's a symphony of emotion, intention, and connection. Welcome to the story of the social body, how evolution shaped us not only to survive, but to belong. Humans are profoundly social creatures. We don't just live in groups, we thrive in them. We form families, tribes, communities, civilizations. We collaborate, compete, console, and communicate. And to do all that effectively, evolution gave us a body built for social signaling. Let's start with the face. Unlike most animals, human faces are incredibly expressive. This is due in large part to our facial muscles, about 43 of them capable of producing thousands of subtle combinations. Other primates can show some emotion, but none do it with quite the same range or nuance. Why? Because in a species that relies on cooperation, the ability to signal feelings, without screaming or flailing, can be the difference between friendship and conflict. Take blushing, for instance. It's uniquely human. When you're embarrassed, blood rushes to your face, creating a visible sign of emotional discomfort. No one's entirely sure why this evolved, but one leading theory is that it acts as a kind of honesty signal, a non-verbal way to say, yes, I know I messed up, and I feel bad about it. It's a biological apology note, stamped in red. Then there's the smile, a gesture so fundamental that even infants do it within weeks of birth. In evolutionary terms, baring your teeth wasn't always friendly. For many animals, it's a threat display, but in humans, a smile signals safety, warmth, and openness. A genuine smile, called the Duchenne smile, involves not just the mouth, but also the eyes, those little crinkles at the corners that we instinctively trust more than any polite grin. And speaking of eyes, humans have a rare trait: white sclerae. Most animals have dark eyes, but our visible whites make it easier to see where someone is looking. This enhances joint attention, which is crucial for teaching, empathy, and those silent, "Did you see that?" glances we give each other in meetings. But faces are just the start. Let's talk about voice. The human voice is an evolutionary marvel. We're one of the only species that can produce such a wide range of vocal sounds with precision. Our larynx, or voice box, sits lower in the throat than in most animals, which gives us a bigger range of pitch and tone. It also increases the risk of choking, an unusual evolutionary trade-off, but one that paid off enormously in the form of spoken language. Language didn't just allow us to name things, it let us share ideas, express emotions, pass on knowledge, and coordinate complex group activities. With language, culture exploded, stories emerged, traditions formed. Gossip. Well, gossip may be the earliest form of social media, but even beyond words, the human voice carries meaning through tone, rhythm, and volume. We can tell when someone is angry, joking, tired, or lying, often before they finish their sentence. A simple hello can sound friendly, sarcastic, confused, or utterly exhausted, depending on how it's said. Evolution also made us deeply sensitive to tone. Babies, for instance, respond to motherese, that sing-songy voice adults use with infants. And it turns out this isn't just cultural, it's biological. Studies have shown that infants across cultures respond more positively to high-pitched melodic speech. It's nature's way of saying, "This person cares about you, listen up." And then there's touch, the most primal form of communication. Long before language, before gestures, there was contact. A mother holding her newborn, a friend's reassuring hand on your shoulder, a partner's embrace. These aren't just gestures, they're neurochemical events. Touch triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which promotes trust and emotional closeness. It's no wonder that physical isolation can feel so painful. Our bodies were designed to connect. All of this, facial expression, vocal tone, body language, touch, is part of the social operating system that keeps our species glued together. And while it's easy to think of evolution as a solitary, survival of the fittest struggle, the truth is that cooperation has been just as vital. The ability to share, empathize, and collaborate has allowed us to build cities, send satellites into space, and yes, even sit quietly in pajamas, watching science videos before bed. Even our emotions, those often unruly passengers, have evolutionary roots in social bonding. Fear protects us. Joy brings us closer. Guilt nudges us to make amends. Love, whatever else it may be, is a powerful glue that holds groups, families, and partnerships together. We cry tears others can see. We laugh contagious laughs. We feel second-hand embarrassment. Our nervous systems are tuned not just to survive, but to relate. You are quite literally a social animal. Your biology shaped by millions of years of relationships, signals, responses, and shared glances. So the next time you smile at a friend, blush in a crowd, or feel your throat tighten when someone speaks kindly to you, remember, these are not just emotions. They are evolutionary triumphs. Proof that we didn't just grow stronger or smarter, we grew closer. And in a world that's sometimes loud, lonely, or overwhelming, that's a comforting thought to hold on to as you drift towards sleep. So here you are, a breathing, blinking, dreaming collection of atoms, assembled through time by forces that never planned for you, but arrived at you all the same. Your body is a living museum of evolutionary innovation. Every heartbeat, every step, every yawn is a quiet echo of the past, of cells learning to cooperate, of fins growing bones, of creatures standing taller, of minds learning to feel and understand. From the spark of life in ancient seas to the soft curl of a smile on a modern human face, evolution has shaped you in ways both grand and subtle. It built lungs to breathe the sky, hearts to move rivers of blood, hands to hold and to build, eyes to find beauty, and a brain to wonder at all of it. You are not just a product of evolution. You are its storyteller, its steward, and maybe, if you're still awake, its quiet, yawning witness.
And that's the wonder of it. Your body isn't just yours. It's a living fossil, carrying the whispers of creatures that swam, crawled, and climbed long before you. Every step, every heartbeat, every breath you take tonight is part of a story billions of years old. If you're still with me, I'd love to hear where you're listening from and what time it is in your little corner of the cosmos. And if you've already drifted off, then maybe evolution just tucked you in for the night. If this journey soothed you, please like and subscribe. It helps this calm corner of sleep theory reach more dreamers like you. Until next time, may your rest be deep, may your dreams be gentle, and may you never forget that the history of life itself is quietly written in you. Good night.